Greetings everyone, this is Lodrik and this is a game War in the Pacific Advanced Edition. And this is now the match against Dojo. Today we will check the turn number 34, 11th February and 12th February 1942 and see if there was any big engagement or situation to have an impact on this ongoing war. So maybe the number one priority situation is if the second carrier strike force can sneak by Cylon, or if Dojo can more or less detect the task force, and then we lost the surprise level. This is the most important, I would say, now in this just ongoing, because the rest the Philippines war is more or less over, the Malayan campaign is over, all the rest needs still time to prepare. This is only a bombardment of the base, only to try to destroy if there's enemy scout planes, because often I get still information that our task forces get scouted or shadowed by enemy airplanes, and normally here can be an airport or airbase, and I have still some light cruiser formation to check the situation and maybe damage and harass this base a little. But with no really invasion force left, I can also not do much. I can only bring some damage here and see if there's something. If I see here some airplanes, then I would maybe attack again, but I also start here to land at the source coast of Borneo to take the last bases. So the next turns I normally use like one invasion platoon or whatever they are, regiment maybe, no, regiment's too big, but some small unit, some Navy Guard unit, something like this, to jump from one base to the next base. They are normally all empty, so I only take them to make sure that there is simply no base left for Dojo to operate out of. So means no Navy engagement in the 11th of February. Now we change already in the morning airstrikes of 11th February. The daily scout and Navy search operations. I scout for Dojo, Dojo scout for me. For sure you have in Batavia and Lugano and other Dutch forces. Batavia and I forgot the other base. Still some air bases so that he can scout around, and also from Palmbang he can of course still operate out. Here we try to find some Chinese Air Force units still, but it's a show of force also. If I sweep every day, then Dojo can simply not run normally out of the airbase something. If I stop this, then maybe one day this Dojo will say, okay, let's try. What is the better tactic? I don't know. Simply I do it, the pilots still get experience for this, and for me it's more important that I control the air. I don't need this kills, and I mean 2-3 more dead Chinese pilots will not change anything here. Bombardment here. Normally I operate after at the beginning everything is a mess. I would say the first 2-3 weeks this is really messy in China with operating air force and army units. But after 2-3 weeks you can normally organize your forces in whole armies, so you have only garrison units in the city for only to hold something, then you have armies to move around to really battle something. And then what I try is normally to have 3 or 4 cities with an airport. So these 4 bases, of course, you must check every time the airbase, every squadron. I mean, I do this. I check every squadron. I check if the fatigue is high, if they need pilots, if they lost airplanes, and if there's overstacking like this. But it's really only the first 3 weeks, a lot of work, and after 3 weeks you normally can very smoothly check your units and make sure that everything works well. It is not like a war in the East 2 where you really have to check every unit again and again and again and must micromanagement everything. It's not so complicated. Only the beginning is super messy. And you can try to you can still continue this messy style and don't care anything, and only care the attack value and not the chain of command and all this stuff. Then it's even more simple, but then of course the efficiency will drop. It is, how to say this, if the Japanese player can defeat the Chinese National Army, it really free up a lot of forces the Japanese can later throw on the Indian, in India and Rangoon, or maybe also on in Australia area, but it will really help a lot the Japanese. So the most important land battle for the Japanese, I would say, is the battle with the Chinese. With the American and the British you have air war and you have the naval engagement, yes. But the land war is normally the Chinese the most important. If you conquer some more islands in the Pacific, they are only islands, they have no big value, they don't have any resources. But in China you pick the big bases with oil, resources, light industry, heavy industry. Okay, now we can see that out of 2 different directions, so 2 different bases, maybe Cooktown and maybe, I don't know, maybe, what is there? Townsville. I don't know if you can see it here. No, not really. But we saw that there are 2 different formations, 3 and 4. And Dojo tried to bomb Buna. But out of 25,000 feet, so very high. and you can also see that it's 4 bombs, so he used them in long range attack. So this pilot gets very tired, so the fatigue will increase much faster, and you have a higher possibility to have ops losses. And if the machines gets damaged, in this case no one gets damaged, damaged machine also have a higher tendency to have a failure on the way back, and especially if you make this long range stuff. So long range bombardment is normally only for emergency situations, I would say, but I really don't have the feeling. Maybe these 4 engine bombers they are more robust for this. Maybe you can use them more for long range. With the Bettys and all these Japanese medium light bombers, I don't think it makes really sense. At the end, this was maybe from Dojo only some hello, I'm still in the game action, because it was very meaningless, and yeah, in the best case he hit maybe the port. Maybe he expected that there is maybe some units. I don't know. But it's good to see that Dojo still at least try again to strike back somehow. And maybe one day we will see a little more. Not that I really hope to lose my carrier and battle fleets, but to have a little more activity from the allies players, of course, maybe interesting. In the real world also, I mean, in this game the allies are some things. I have to say this: if you are the commander of the allies or of the Japanese, you're like a dictator. You have to, what you say is the order. There's no one question your command. But in reality, of course, the allies had a lot of different strategies. The Dutch don't want to give up their stuff easily. The British say we want first fight in Africa, and the Americans, they maybe was proud and also don't want to give up. And the Australian was in the miserable situation between everyone. And I think for the Allies, the best case or the best help was that the Japanese Navy and Army was at least at the same level of split. The Japanese Army and Navy never agree for one plan together. They always do their own stuff, and at the end, often they blockade each other. And here we can see that we still lend some additional units north of Leh to clean up this area. Okay. And these are... I think Dojo had this is the second part of the big army. He tried to escape, and this is the first piece. Or I don't know exactly more how these units come out, but you can see this is only 2 corps and 1 army commander. So this is 3-star general of the Chinese with 2 of this. You can call it division. At the end, they have the same fighting power like the Japanese division normally, if they have, but they call them corps, but they are similar to a Japanese division. But they're very broken. And maybe they have not so bad attack values, but they have really only soft or small arms equipment. They often have no heavy equipment, and they also lack experience, and they also lack morale. And third handicap is for the Chinese army is, of course, this the commanders, the generals. They're often very weak. I think the best Chinese commanders are something like the weakest Japanese commanders, similar to the Germans and the Russians, I would say. And so even if the attack value is 1-to-1, normally Japanese are always have the double fighting power at the end. And in this case we see we come from 2000 drop to 1600 roughly, and Dojo dropped from 374 to 160. So you can see Dojo dropped nearly half and we drop only like 25%. And this is at the end a total victory again, because we only lost 2 non-combat and 1 engineer unit. And these are only disabled, and like I said before, disabled doesn't matter for me because I can get it back in 1 week. And here you can see again, most of the Chinese are simply destroyed. So these units are now in heavy mountains. I will not care or dare to go in these heavy mountains, because this is the only advantage for Chinese units, because you don't have heavy equipment. You can much easier walk in this heavy mountain stuff without have supply issues. If you have an army with heavy equipment, then you will get a problem, because how you want to support all this heavy equipment in big mountains. Anyway, we can see that this this 2 corps are now totally broken. I mean, not totally broken, but mostly broken. I don't think that there's much left. And here we take one other small base. Yeah. Here we try to take Sabang. And the first attack was okay. You can see that we dropped from 60 to 20 and the Dutch from 80 to 10. And we can see that we reduce the enemy fortification level to 0. We lost more numbers, but also mostly only disabled. Similar to the Dutch. Most important is that we get rid of the enemy fortification. But it was not enough. And this is his Dojo bomb us, and we can do nothing because this is not enough to attack normally. You need double, better triple the attack values in the defender, especially because this is a heavy jungle area with triple defense buff. So no, we need reinforcements. I must send additional forces here if I can get them. So all in all, a very passive turn. Only air war, but nothing really, no special air war. Yeah, and this is this game calculation. We lost Leh because there was an Australian force nearby. There was also a Japanese force nearby, but the game simply calculates this. A base without a force, so it's an empty force and there's an enemy force nearby, then there's a possibility that it's switched the owner. Okay, one lonely Dutch submarine, but we only have this patrol boat. Don't expect normally anything from these patrol boats. Or expect only that there are patrol boats and they are only to make contact with the enemy and nothing more. Don't expect anything more. Only you get feedback and you know what you see, or what you get a feedback and know, oh, there is an enemy, and you also know what kind of enemy. And this is everything. What is the purpose? So the night of 12th February was also not really active. Okay, at least one of Dojo's submarines try to attack us. But at the end, no hit, no explosion, but we also cannot get it in the deep water. In March, with Dojo I'm already in March, mid of March now, I think nearly 1 month in advance, and at that time I have a better equipment to hunt submarines in deep water. But normally first in April the Japanese player get so much equipment that it's really possible to hunt submarines in deep water. April is normally the month you really can try to get rid of this threat. The only problem is it's never easy, it will never be easy, and the Allies, they get so many submarines that maybe if you are lucky you can keep the numbers of submarines hunting your cargo is stable. If you are not successful, the number will rise, and then you not only have 2-3 submarines, and there are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and a dozen. And even if they have shitty torpedoes at the beginning, latest in end of 42 or beginning of 43, this will be over, and then you get into trouble. Also because the American submarines have much earlier radar, so they can much easier find cargo shipping. Not like the Japanese, they get first in mid of 44 some radar to find more easy enemy shippings. Okay, the typical bombardment with not very high efficiency, but training for the pilots. Dojos get again nothing. And there are the B-17, but this time only from one base, and you can see there are only 4. So maybe this time one of the base had bad weather, or maybe the pilots had not enough experience and they failed in the ready check and they don't take off, because this can happen if weather and or overstack of the airport, or sometimes simply the commander of the squadron must make something like a ready check, and if you fail for what reason ever, then the squadron will not take off. Or like this, he chooses the other target. Okay. So he split his forces. But at the end, all this was meaningless in real hard numbers. Of course it will scare the soldier on the ground if he sees there's a heavy bomber coming, but in this kind of game I don't know if it's really have an impact like this. If you make a ground attack, then maybe even if you don't hit, it will maybe increase the fatigue or lower the morale. But if you make a port attack or a air base attack, I'm not sure if the land forces will suffer with this. So normally I use my air force, my army air force only for ground attack or airfield attack. My navy bombers I normally use only for port attack and airfield attack, but not so much for ground attack. The navy bombers, they simply don't carry enough bomb loads to really do a lot of ground attack bomb damage. And often ground attack damage, like here, the kill numbers are not so important. It's really only to slow down the army that I can catch up, and to simply also keep their morale low and their fatigue high. That is, I think, the more important. If you have an attack like this, then of course it's okay to kill 100, but often you can see here Chinese forces with 50,000 to 100,000 guys, and then you make 100 kills, then you still must have 1,000 attacks to really destroy these forces. So it's nearly impossible with this kind of bombers to really do so much damage. Okay. Scooter formation, make some support attack or shell bombardment. Because I sent only one Navy Guard unit, and this is simply something to support this this ground strike. And you can see that we disabled a lot of squadrons, most are only disabled. So that was not bad. And you also can see this is the first part of now the invasion of Java. The Balikpapan force, I think these are 3 or 4 naval guard units. I sent them now to Semarang to create here something like a invasion, to take over normally the base, because this is a big port. I think it's a port of 5. And normally there's often originally only a base force or something like this. You can see here already that there's no enemy fighting units. We could destroy and disable a lot of non-combatant engineers. So there will be only, I think, a base force. We don't get... And you also can see only 2 coastal guns shot. So it's normally very easy to take this base. I use some scout planes to check if there's something, and I saw nothing, only the base force, so I choose this base for my landing forces. So I can bring now the Philippine armies, the 14th and the 16th army, in the next 1, 2, 3 weeks down to Java, and try to expand the control of Java and take over the east side and the west side. And this is now the army commander. So the 3-star general, he was with his 2 or 3 corps, and he was not fast enough, or I don't know why he don't get kicked out with the rest of the forces. So I think this is in this case of good, because normally it's better not to kill the corps, because after 3 months they come back to Chongqing automatically. with 25 or 30% of their with their manpower. So these are now very broken and they are still in the mountains. So to get them back, you must at least, you must go back to Chengdu or Chongqing and let them stay here for 1 or 2 months that they can refit completely. But this HQ is now destroyed, so the HQ also will not give any bonus support or supply to these forces. So these forces are really must completely go back. Now, if you have the HQ with you, the units maybe can start to get supplies and reinforcements much faster. So in this case, it is nice to get rid of this HQ. I also don't know if this general will lose maybe some of his skill points, don't know. But an army without HQs are always much weaker. I think a HQ gives 10% attack value bonus or something like this. And if you can have a HQ chain, like you have the 3-star general with a 4-star general, is a 5-star general, and they all are in a chain, you can get up to 30% additional fighting, attack value bonus. This can be huge. But often it's not possible. But at least have one HQ with you. So we try now to take the base, and normally the attack value is good. But in this case we had a bad roll, because last time we saw that Dojo's Dutch forces, I think they come with an 80 and drop to a 10. In this case they drop only to a 14. And they start with a 56, so much less drop. But we drop low, and we drop more. So in this case it's always a little luck. And in this, so we was not successful. So this is why the attack failed more or less. I mean, at the end you can see we only have 2 disabled units. And the Dutch forces have much more disabled units. So it's not that our forces gets destroyed, but our forces also was not able to conquer the base. So we must try it another day. Yeah, this is only bombardment. You can also see that our 60 is normally stable, but I think that Dojo will slowly lose a little more attack value. Not a lot, but maybe every 2 days 1 attack value, because maybe he's running out of supplies or something. Okay, so now we arrive at February 13th, 1942. And it was a very quiet turn. I think we had no real air battle at all, you can see. No air-to-air losses, no destroyed, nothing, no flag, only operational losses. So this day was really no navy engagement. The air bombardment was at the lowest possible level. And we only had a little land battle, and I think I also told Dojo more or less that this was everyone take a day off more or less, and we only move our pieces on the board and see if there's maybe something coming up soon. So I cannot even show you something air losses. You can only see that I lost some. I think this is a scout plane, a medium bomber. Dojo lost his Catalina. It's always good. This is, I think, a transport from the Australian Air Force, a DC-2. So, but normally nothing really. We lost 2 airplanes. We can see this, and out of these 2 airplanes, both pilots are dead. This we can see. So dead pilots. I mean, 2 lost airplanes and 2 dead pilots is a terrible ratio, of course, but the absolute number is very small, so it doesn't matter really so much. In sunk ships, I think was nothing, so no one lost anything. I saw nothing, so nothing. Totally boring, or let's say not boring but inactive. So we can see that we make sure that the most important was here, I think, that we kicked out the shiny forces, so the highway is still free. You know, we must get rid of these forces. So we have here now our other army with nearly 4,000 attack value, and here we can see that there are only 4 forces with roughly 21,000 guys. So this is nothing. And here is also some forces. And I think last time already Dojo entered this hex, and our unit was not ready to attack because we was in strategic mode. So I had to change it to combat mode, and we still need 1 day completely ready. But luckily, but I think it's also not possible because also 22,000 guy. If Dojo maybe saw this and attacked me immediately, but he took a very big risk because he don't know how strong my forces are and in which mode they are. But this was, maybe it would be a problem for us, but now our forces will are nearly ready. And I also sent my tank forces here because they are very quickly, because in this kind of terrain you can see this everywhere is street, and these tank units are super fast. I think you can go nearly 1 hex in 1 day. So I think I come from here and still I arrive here. And now I can, at the end of the turn, I can change them to combat mode. I don't know. And then I maybe attack them this turn already, or I wait next turn and then attack them. Anyway, we get rid of this unit normally, and we get rid of this unit. And then also this southern highway is then clean up, and then we have a direct link to Shanghai via road. And we have also normally a railway can operate here. So we get normally enough supplies to Xi'an to maintain this big army, because if you this is not a big army, but here to have so much attack value, and if I have here now more attack value, yeah, only 800, but here are more. So I mean, if I bring this big forces here into this area, I must make sure that I have the supplies. Really, or you have the same. You have this problem like many armies. You start with a big army, like Napoleon start with the biggest army at the time, enter Russia, and before even the first battle with the Russians starts, half his army was already starving and falling apart. So big numbers at the beginning of a campaign means nothing if you cannot maintain them. Here is nothing more to say. This is a very long journey because it's a small road. This is also needs long time. We're still blocking Jinan and waiting that Dojo do something. We will see how he act. We also still have here cleanup operations, and I try to bring here my other army forces. Oops. This is the 23rd Army with roughly 1,000 attack value. I try to catch these 2 Chinese armies. They trying to escape here. It's hard to bombard because it's rough terrain with wood, and my bombers have not very much efficiency in this area. So I don't know if I can catch up fast enough. Normally what you can do in this case is, if you have if you had armor divisions, I could normally, but I think this is a little risky. I could use now this unit to go to this hex and block it. But this armor unit is this is only a recon unit, so it is based on cavalry and motorized squads. They don't have really tanks. They have only this Panzer 1 tank Latin. So these are 5-ton tanks. They have only MG and nothing more. So there's nothing really to stop something. They are only very fast and mobile. So if I go now and block this, Dojo maybe simply can say, even with 23,000 he move here in and crash my forces. They can never hold this. It will maybe delay his forces for 1 or 2 turns, but at the end, what are 23,000 Chinese forces? And even if they escape, It doesn't matter. Dojo have here 100, over 100,000 here, 36,000 here, 180,000 here, and I think here more. So with the Chinese forces, I only count in 100,000s normally, or at least with 10,000 the smallest. This is all not enough. They're also very broken. I don't care this. If they escape, let them escape. I must see the big picture. Okay, yeah, what else you can see? I think I talked about this before, but we can see I use Canton for an airbase. Simply, it's easy to support over Hong Kong. You can land supplies in Hong Kong and then they will flow to Canton. Canton itself also have a port. So if you want, you can bring stuff immediately to Canton and not must unload in Hong Kong. But Hong Kong normally need supports for the shipyard. Because you have here a shipyard. And this is one of the bigger shipyards before you have Singapore or the Manila. So you can repair here any battleship. Because the shipyard in Saigon cannot handle battleships because it's a inland port. So this is official river. So only heavy cruisers can enter here. But no heavy, I don't know if it's 15,000 or 20,000 ton ships, and then this game will say no, you cannot enter here. So this is why I only bring up I think you start with 10,000, but this is too small for the Japanese heavy cruisers because they're often 12, 13, 14,000. So I bring it up to 20,000. That is not too much, and it helps you to handle other equipment stuff. But normally, yeah, this is okay. So Saigon for heavy cruisers and everything but a small, and Hong Kong normally for battleships. Because if you always must bring your battleships back to Japan, it's not so far away, but it's still always time. I try to keep it short. And of course, if you have Singapore, and if you are lucky, and you get Singapore without damage, like there's a shipyard of 50, but it was at 0, so I need now 50 days to fix this damage. This is of course really a setback. Okay, because we are here in China, what else? So I use Canton normally to control this airspace. Because there is already airport and you can simply go easy to level 7. You don't never eat something more than 7. Then I use Henko normally. It's the same reason. I make only mistake. I normally won't go into 7, but I forgot to stop it and then I was at 8. Can happen. But 7 is normally enough. This is here for the central area. So Canton here in the source. Hong Kong here in the center. Then Kaifeng is here in the middle north area, because from here you can dominate all this area. And then I have Shengting here in the north, and more you don't need. So Shengting is normally for this Yan'an area. Kaifeng I use for this valley of Xi'an. This is Hankou I normally use to dominate the Changsha area, and Canton I use to dominate all this in the source. This is all. You don't only need these spaces, and you can see that they are all linked mostly with rail. This also makes it very easy to move heavy equipment like radar later, or your installation equipment, AV support. Everything can rail very easy. This is also why you normally must very fast try to get and clean up rail links. This is also why you need normally the city. But you have normally the two strategy options. You can say you try to take the city directly, but this can end bloody. Or you simply try, what I do is maneuver around and make it impossible for the allied player to hold the cities. This is now what Dojo did. Dojo is now in position. Dojo lost more or less 250,000 guys, because these guys are now out of action. They are now trapped in these mountains. Up to now, even 1 month later, they don't come out of the mountains. I bomb them sometimes, but he's out of supplies and where he won't go. If he go out here in the highway, then I can normally bring my forces very fast here. And then I force him to battle. If he stay in the mountains, he will die. And it's normally trapped. These units are normally really trapped. And I don't know how it will end, but I think for sure they all will die. Sooner or later. Good. So let's go to, this is Singapore is still under maintenance. And at that point, this was my mistake. I simply, you can see repairs on, but, or maybe I switched it on again. But at that time, really, if you take Singapore, like I said before, the shipyard you must always repair, and I always will repair the heavy industry. But don't repair more light industry and resources and manpower. It's cost you too many supplies. Maybe you can do this if you have really enough supplies, then you can maybe switch it on. But especially for Singapore, I would really focus, if it's damaged, the most important is get the shipyard up, and then after this normally get the heavy industry up. What I will have in the future is this is because it's also very hard to really calculate. This is all these army forces and this the base, they consume supplies, and they always show this in a very abstract area, like you need normally 7,000 supplies, but this means now that this is per turn or per day, and you really consume them, and you're running also these missions, and this is already inside your calculation. It's not so 100% clear how it will calculate this. But roughly you can say you need these supplies normally, but it's hard. Not always easy. And I make here a mistake and that I run a little low on supplies. And the problem is you need normally 20,000 supplies to really to have your air forces ready for upgrade. If I remember, you must, I don't know if I can do this now. I have any unit. Yeah. You can see here, but maybe the airbase is still damaged, maybe. No, everything is repaired. And we have at least double the supplies. Because sometimes I think someone asked for this. I saw this somewhere. Some airplanes like this, they can use drop tanks. Then you can see this. Then you can see that the numbers changing. If you use a drop tank, the airplane will use double the supplies for every mission it runs. So this is why it's normally better to, if you activate this is also only for special operations, not keep it running for non-stop. This will burn a lot of supplies in the long run. But you can only do this if you have at least double the minimum supplies. So the minimum supplies are 7,000. So I must have at least 14,000 supplies in the base that I can activate the drop tanks. Now I don't know if there's any base I have less than double. I don't think so. So I cannot show you how it looks. But it will simply be grey out and you cannot touch it. Okay. Yeah, only because maybe someone would like to see it. Our heavy cruisers are still in repair here. But slowly, you can say every day, maybe 1 point less. You can see that or maybe every turn 1 point less. Sometimes you get 1 point, sometimes you get 2 points. You can see that the repair ship, this cruiser needs still 128 days to fix all damage. So far the repair ship say he can fix everything. I'm not really sure if it's possible to fix also this major damage. Maybe. And here's also some heavy machine gun destroyed. We will see. But I try only simply to get the ships more ready before, in the long run, I must bring them to Singapore. But I can only bring them to Singapore if the shipyard of Singapore is have a capacity. And now you can see that my shipyard is already over maximum. And because we have here some destroyers and upgrade. And yes, because I think I talked about this already, this was a mistake. But I first realized this later. These are the Minkanse destroyer. And the Minkanse destroyer make no sense to upgrade them, because this upgrade is not useful. You normally better convert Minkanse destroyers to APD. But at that time, I more or less, I think that turn or next turn, I realized, oh shit, I make a mistake. But okay, can happen. And it's also not a totally problem. I mean, it costs you some supplies. Most handicap is that these ships are, I think, out for, you can say 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks. These destroyers are out of action. But these are also one of the weakest destroyers you have. Yeah. Good. Let's check this carrier operation. So this is the Battleship Fleet. I had to prepare them a little later, so they are 1 turn behind, but they will normally catch up, I think. And you can see the battleships, no detection. Here is our heavy cruiser formation, no detection. Here is our light cruiser formation, also no detection. And this is the carrier fleet, also no detection. So we make this move here at the maximum, more or less, because we can see here is Colombo, it's 10 range. I try to keep this distance 10, 11, because most of the recon airplanes of the British, they don't have this range. Catalinas, they have the range, but it's this early at the war, I think the British, they don't have so many Catalinas here. And I don't know if the British have anything else can reach this. We can maybe check it, because I forgot it. We can go for normally what you will use for this. Level bombers, patrol. Maybe patrol. And then something British. So this is a Catalina. The Catalina, you can see, they have a normal radius of 16. But they get this first in next month. So luckily now they don't have it. And I also don't know how many and where they get it. But at this stage of the war, the British, they don't have this. And the Sutherland 3, I think, comes later. Yeah, this is very late. And I think this is from the Dutch. No, the British, they don't have more. And this is even later. So these are the 3 big patrol airplanes, and this is normally for the long range stuff. Because the other stuff is all much shorter. Torpedo bomber, transport, fighters, dive bombers. Normally I was thinking the British also have a float planes, but float planes have far too less range. The British float planes, the Walrus 2, have only a range of 4, so far too short range. So of course, if here is some airbase, then of course the 4 range is enough. But I gambled that normally at the beginning of the war here is nothing in sight, and this early in the war, similar to my first carrier strike near Suva, at the beginning, this is also what I mean, and also what the Japanese said. The Japanese said also, they have the first 6 months of the war, they can strike like crazy, and they must strike crazy and be successful in the 6 months, because after that 6 months the Allies simply they outproduce everything what the Japanese can produce. They even have a better quality, they have the quantity, and they have the better position. So if the Japanese don't win the war in the 6 months, they will never win the war ever more, normally, if nothing crazy stupid happened for the Allies. Anyway, so we are now here, and I think next turn we can try to sneak to maybe Goa in this area, maybe here. Keep the distance of 8 to 10 from the mainland of India. And then next turn, so not next turn, but next turn we can try to make the attack on Bombay. So next turn is 13th, 14th, but 15th, 16th we will maybe have an engagement of Bombay. But what we really see in Bombay, and if we only catch some cargo ships or some local minesweepers, or if we can find something bigger, who knows. Or we have a surface engagement with some cruisers or destroyers, or even British battleships. Okay, so here I really only use some Navy Guard units. You have some of them. Normally you need more in the Rabul area, but I keep here at least some to support the invasion stuff. One to pick up here all the bases. And here in Semarang I have 4 of my Navy Guard units, simply because I was not sure if it's 4 is simply a force. You can see 4 times 60, it's already 240 attack value, even if it's only based on light. You can see this only some heavy machine guns and some rifles and some support stuff. It is something, but it's really not something. It's more like a mobile force and not a real heavy fighting force. It's nothing really an army can, or you cannot defeat armies with this, but base forces and support units you can destroy with this, but not more. So we land here and we try to take the base next turn, and then normally I try to take Jakarta as soon as possible, because if you take Jakarta, you have these 2 bases. This is also why I also like to land here if it's possible. You split Java immediately in 2 pieces. If you control both of this, there's no reinforcements more possible. Then you can force your units in one side, and the Allies forces normally can only try to use ships. But if you control, you can also try to also do this, of course. Normally you must as soon as possible try to install here airbase for local air support. And also, if you have here the airbase, it's nearly impossible for the Allies more to operate anything here nearby. Especially what I did, I use a lot of fighter sweeps to reduce the enemy's fighter air force, so that now Dojo don't have more. Dojo more or less gambled away his fighter forces early on. And I think I very soon can dominate the skies if I want. The problem in this game is ground attack really works not so well if you attack a base. So I think Dojo have maybe his main forces in Batavia and in Surabaya. And if they're not moving, then they're in a defense position. Then you can bomb them for days and weeks. And the impact will be only that you burn the enemy's supplies, but not more. You must normally attack enemy forces they are on the move, then you can really destroy them. So it will not bring me too much if I now have here a lot of bombers and bomb here all the time. It's more important to bring here some fighters to cover my own forces, that my units can move without enemy bomber attacks. But we will see the next 2-3 turns how this ends. Yeah, I don't know, we took here now the second base, so I move here some forces in the next turn. We arrive here in the jungles to get rid of this American forces, and we also control this island. I also drive a force here in the source to take the last bases here. And so we start soon the cleanup of the Philippines. And maybe here's a bigger forces in the South Philippines, but we will see how we clean up this mess. What else I can say? So the PC or the game rules simply just switch the base of Leh back to the Australians, but I already moved my forces back to Leh, so I think maybe next turn we arrive in Leh again, then we take the base again, and then we have to go to the mountains, and this switching, there's simply one more force missing. Normally I need one forces here in Salamaua and keep one in Leh and use a third to hunt these Australian forces. But I simply don't have so many forces here. It's a question of focus. I really, like I said before, my focus is get rid of this Philippines, Manila, Bataan enemy first. This is everything I can get from Japan. I really send to this to get rid of this, and after this I more or less, or even at the same time, I try to also get Tarakan and Balikpapan. These two bases are also very important for me, and Miri, Brunei. This four forces is all oil. And now, after I took this and I just finished this, you can see I just 2-3 turns ago I take the last stuff here, and now I already start the invasion of Java. Because Java is the next hotspot, because you need Surabaya, because Surabaya in the Singapore are your forward bases for ship repair. Here is a shipyard, and also in Surabaya you can install a shipyard. Now it's a very small shipyard, but if you build here a 20, similar to Saigon, then you can repair here all your submarines, destroyers, every kind of cruiser, everything what is not carrier and battleship. This you still have to bring to Singapore. But from Surabaya you can normally bring all your submarines down to make your sub-war around Perth and your cruisers. Because the submarines will never really win the war for you in Perth. If you don't want to conquer it, you need your submarines, but you also need normally cruiser formations. Because the Allied player normally will of course bring here destroyers and sub-hunters, and the submarine can never fight with them, at least not successful. But if these are really only sub-hunter forces, and you have a heavy cruiser formation, and the heavy cruiser formation can ambush these destroyers, then it's a juicy target. Because to destroy here if you get rid of the enemy sub-hunter forces with your cruisers, then your submarines can again try to intercept the cargo shippings. Because heavy cruisers you can normally not keep here for a long time, it's too dangerous. And they also don't have maybe the range, and you burn a lot of fuel. But submarines can stay here hidden for a long time. So the submarines are good for hunting the cargo ships. But yeah. Yeah. And again, now looking back, I would simply do one thing where more focus. I don't really have here really much to use and force. Really only, I think I have, this is a complete force. This is only a broken piece. This is a broken piece. And I think he's also only a broken piece. Yeah, these are all broken pieces. And I think I have only I have one unit in Wake, but Wake is important, and you get later some here some guns installed. So to lose Wake will be terrible. You must at least keep the force in Wake. I think up to in April or May you get here some reinforcements automatically. So long you must make sure that you don't lose Wake, not that the allies make here some. If you take this force out and then the allies come and take the base back, and then you don't get these guns because it's not worth it. So this force is blocked here. You also need normally at least something like this. This is not even much because you have here some guns installed. This is I think what you get also later in Wake. Some stuff I must keep here too. I already took everything out and focused everything on Namu and Oyman Namu. Here's only Air Force stuff. Not even, only a little support attack value. So this is very lightly defended all. Simply because I don't expect that Dojo will here attack so much. So the only forces I have here normally left over are these two forces. And these two forces normally I had to organize it to pick them both and bring back to Rabaul. And then I have 6 Navy Guard units to attack. And now I have only here 4 ready, but my focus was more to ship base installation, engineers, supplies and fuel back and forward. And I more or less let these 2 units here stay too long, I would say. You can of course argue that these bases have some value, that you keep the forces here because they're producing resources. This 20 maybe not so much, but these other forces have 79. I mean, if you can get it up to 100, but normally I don't bring you supplies, so it will not repair. I can also switch it off, but if you don't have at least 10,000 supplies, it will also not start repair. So doesn't matter. And resources are so far my lessest concern. So they don't have really much value. But so if I could go back and this time I would simply say, okay, I organize to pick these units up and bring them to Rabaul, and then I go for Port Moresby. But we will see how this plays out, how I did it. Yeah. And here I only keep some submarines. I always check if they have some like here, this is detection. If they have a detection, then I normally always use the 1 hex or 2 hexes. I go to the other position. So simply go over, see no detection, okay, okay, no detection, okay. Here's a detection, okay. Then go somewhere else. Even if I go one in this direction. This is of course micromanagement. You don't must do this, but of course if you have detection, the enemy know where you are. At least you must expect that the enemy know where you are. I don't know if a detection of 1 really show you, but if you at least, I think if you have detection 3 of 3, I would say yeah. Okay, anything else I can show? I don't know. Or something what I remember or want to explain? I don't think so. So far, I think it's first enough. I hope this was interesting, and we will soon see what happens in the area of Bombay, and also maybe the invasion of Java, and maybe the upcoming attack on Port Moresby. So stay safe, have a nice day, take care, bye bye.